Alright, welcome back. So by now you should already have an idea on how to update the data, because we have already built a form with validation and we are able to save the data. And remember, to populate the form inputs we can use the old method. So let me show you a very simple trick to use the old method so that we are able to update the data, which is the next feature that we are going to build right now. So let's start by creating a new route inside the file web.php, and this route will be responsible to take us to the edit form as follows. As you know, we can add the parameter within the curly braces to choose which contact to edit, and a good place to actually have the string is contacts/id/edit. I want you to also observe the previous routes to make sure that we are maintaining the same nomenclature. In other words, to make sure that the endpoint is named in a similar fashion. So let's go ahead and redirect this to the contact controller. We'll build a function called edit inside the controller, and let's go ahead and name this route contacts.edit. Now inside the index.blade view over here, we need to make sure that the button which is the second one from the right, the edit button, redirects us to the edit page, which we will create in a moment. So let's locate the hyperlink, and as I said, it should be the second button right here, and let's replace it with the appropriate route, like so. So the route is the same route we just created, and this route will also need to have access to the ID of the contact. So now, after saving the file, let's go back to the controller and create our edit function. And this is going to be something like this. We are going to take ID as our parameter, which we are grabbing from the route, and we are going to have a contact variable populated from the contact model by finding that respective ID. Secondly, we would also want to have a variable that will store the company that this contact is basically going to choose which company this contact works for. So we will need this in a similar fashion when we populated the drop-down list. So we'll have company, we're only going to select these two columns, and finally we will prepend the entire list with all companies. So in the drop-down menu we will have all companies and all the companies that are retrieved from the company model. We will use this, of course, to populate our view. In the similar fashion we had this or the create, like so. So let's go ahead and finish this function by returning the view, and let's also make sure that we are returning both variables to the context.edit view, and we can do it in a similar way that we did in the previous time. This time, however, we will not be passing one variable, but we will pass two variables. And in Laravel, or more accurately in PHP, we can use the compact function and we'll pass it all the arguments, all the variables that we need to pass to the context.edit view. So let's save this file, and the last step is of course to create the context.edit view, because we have not created that yet. So on the left hand side in the file explorer, let's create a file. And let's call it edit.blade.php. As we've mentioned several times, the edit view is going to be exactly the same as the create view. The only difference is that the edit view will have all the input text boxes populated with the previous data, and as we've seen already, we can use the old function to do it. So let's go ahead, switch to the create view, copy the entire contents and paste them over here. And let's replace the title to edit contact. Secondly, we might as well update the route to something else, but actually let's do it later on. So let's save the file, we'll come back to this in a moment. However, for the time being, let's go back to our contacts. Let's click on the edit to make sure that we actually get to the edit view. Take also note that we are actually editing the right context, so make sure that the endpoint or the URL is correct. So now we can go back to the partial view. Remember that we have the same form partial view for both the edit and the create views. And we need to do some little changes over here by doing some updates on the old method. And what we need to do here is we can update this method so that it will hold in the second argument. So we are going to add a second argument, and this will be the existing value from the contact variable passed from the controller. In other words, we are going to inject this contact value inside of the old method over here. And this can be done very easily by saying contact first name, just like that. So what this means is that if there is a contact first name value available, the old method is going to populate this input text box with this value. If, however, this is not available or is empty, then populate it with the previous value when we clicked on submit or save, just as when we used it with the create view. So let's go ahead and update the rest of the fields, in particular the old method. Alright, so you should see something like this. So your code is similar to mine. For the address, we need to pay some attention because we need to do it in the following way. So the old method for the address currently looks like this, and this needs to be updated in such a way that it reflects the old contact address.